everybody, Zach Dibmars here for Fish Talk Magazine. Thank you for tuning in for another installment of Live with Lenny. I'd like to thank our sponsor for this evening, Yamaha Outboards. You can hop over to fishtalkmag.com/Yamaha and check out a series of Chesapeake Bay and Mid-Atlantic dealers for all your service and repower needs. So check that out. I'd like to welcome our host, Lenny Rudo. How you doing?
What's happening, Zach? How are you?
I'm doing great. It's
Excellent.
a beautiful evening to go fishing.
It is a beautiful evening to go fishing, and we're going to talk about evening fishing on the tribs. First, I got to tell you, I was out today, and it was not so beautiful. It was blowing a pretty good bit today, but we managed to find some cover. But it was a little tough, man. We caught redfish, we caught flounder, we caught rockfish, and you know what? Every dang one was a throwback.
At least you're catching, you know.
You know that it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Would have been nice to get a red more than 17.99999 inches, but you know, what are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
At least we got reds, right? That's a pretty cool thing.
That is awesome. Oh, I got a nice red thanks to you for taking me down to the Chesapeake Country chips.
Oh, that was quite a red.
a fish of a lifetime. I don't think
that was a bigger redfish than I've ever caught. That was like by a significant margin. That was a monster.
Hey, Kevin. Who prefers bull? Is that a question or statement? I'm really sure. I don't know. White perch. Always white perch. They're the best fish in the bay.
All right. Well, we got a lot to get into tonight, but we do have some announcements first. You're on.
All right. Well, first up, I'd just like to let everyone know my button's not working.
Your button's not working. Uh-oh. Technical difficulties.
Technical difficulties. This is the first. Oh, there we go. All right. So this weekend we got the Chesapeake Bay Foundation's Rod and Reef Slam. This is a really unique tournament. It's great for kids. Lenny and I have done it a few times in the past when it was down at the Tillman Island Reefs. Now it's open to bay-wide fishing reefs. So the purpose of this is to bring awareness to the biodiversity that these artificial reefs contribute to the Chesapeake Bay. I think when we did, we caught 11 species. And that was just in one day. Now this event is a whole week long, and it's like $50 to enter. It's great for kids. All you got to do is go out, get some Hayabusa, Chesapeake sabiki ribs, tip them with some fish bites, drop them on these reefs, and it doesn't. There's no size. It's just you're looking for volume of species, and it's just a ton of fun. There's some great prizes. There's a tournament party on the 15th at Chesapeake Bay Foundation headquarters. So I highly encourage you to check this out, and you can fish every day if you want, or just one day. And it's just a great event, and it's really promotes everything that the Coastal Conservation Association does for the Bay, contributing to these reefs, specifically the Maury reefs, and also they do a lot of work with CBF on building theirs as well.
It's an awful lot of fun fishing that one, and I gotta point out an old memory, Zach. You may recall. We went over the edge and managed to win that tournament one year by catching silver sides. You remember this?
We did.
Because any fish counts, right? Any fish counts for your total. If it's a fin fish and you catch it on hook and line, you're good. And we were tied with somebody. I don't remember who. We needed one more species, and we caught like everything we could think of.
I also caught a naked goby.
Yeah, right. And by putting a little teeny piece of bloodworm on a little teeny hook, we actually managed to catch silver sides, and that put us over the top. So it's a lot of fun. It's very different than your normal tournament because you're just going for how many different species can you catch. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, and again, great for kids. I mean, they're just when you're fishing with sabikis, it's nonstop action and super fun. We did that about a month ago with the crew from CCA. We actually went to the Tillman Reefs and the Cooks Point Reefs. Which, if you're participating in the tournament, I just gave you two very good locations to target. We caught like over 10 species that day.
Yeah, we got a bunch.
Everything but rockfish in white perch. If I recall, actually.
Yes.
So anyway, check it out. So also with CCA, we got a banquet coming up.
We do. I need to go for the glasses for the notes on this because there's a lot to cover here, people. The Annapolis CCA chapter banquet is coming up October 10th. It is a really fun time. It's held at CBF's facility. Gorgeous place. I mean, absolutely gorgeous. Tons of cool stuff for auction. Really good time. And there's a new little twist this year, okay? Everybody who buys a table, and you can get together a group of friends or your business can buy one. You get 8 tickets. It's $600 to get an 8 top. And there's a limited number. There's only like 8 or 9 of these. Okay. And each table is going to be entered in a raffle to win a fishing trip with yours truly. I'm going to take out
You just pointed at me. You just pointed at me. You got to point at yourself.
Like that.
That guy.
Yeah, we're going to go out on the Fish Talker. We're going to have a great time fishing the tribs, just like what we're going to talk about tonight. We'll get a great crew together. And obviously, I can't take 8 on my boat. So, I'm saying whoever's sitting at the table, the top 5 are going to have to fight it out to get to see who goes. I just can't do 8. But the 8 tops are going to be the only ones in this raffle. So you've got a really flipping good chance of winning it. And let's say you're a business owner out there right now and you're thinking, I'd like to get involved with CCA. I'd like to help promote it. I'd like everyone else to know what matters to me. Get a sponsorship. It's $1,000. You get the 8 top table. You get all kinds of cool prizes, and you get announced and shown at the banquet. So everybody's going to know who you are. Everybody's going to know what you support. So it's a really good way to get your name out there. Excellent business move. Excellent way to support CCA. So again, that's coming up on October 10th.
And don't forget, the tickets include an awesome dinner catered by Giolides, open bar, and a raw oyster bar as well. So
yep.
Again, and it's a Chesapeake Bay Foundation. Beautiful, scenic, awesome.
It is gorgeous. Couldn't have a better venue. You really couldn't. So one more thing I wanted to announce tonight: CCA Virginia currently has a request out to the VMRC to give a daily limit on hickory shad. As of now, there is no limit. People just fill buckets sometimes. Not sure that's the greatest thing in the world, particularly for a fish like shad, which we know, can be greatly impacted. The public comment period is open right now. Just go to the website. Let's see if I can point right. There it is. There we go. Go to the website. Everything's backwards on the computer screen. It's very confusing. Go to the website and give your public comment, people. The more folks that chime in, the more likely it is that action will be taken. So that's an important one. We hope everyone will do that. That is the last of my announcements. But before I totally shut down the announcement phase, I am going to say thank you to Yamaha myself. We appreciate the support. Anybody who runs a Yamaha, you know how good they are. You're a happy camper. So, hey, gotta love it. And now we're going to revert to one more CCA action, Zach. I think we have some winners to announce, right?
We do. So our annual Great Chesapeake Invasive Count. This is running for a full year now, and
is sponsored by Yamaha Rightwaters, by the way.
Yes. And to participate, it's simple. It's free. You just go to the ccamd.org/count and sign up, and then you're going to email, and it will ask you to create an iAngler app account, which is used by a variety of fishing tournaments. You just get out there and you go fishing. If you catch a northern snakehead, a blue catfish, or a flathead catfish, you lay it on a roller, snap a photo, and you're entered to win some of these cool products. So let's see who won for the month of August. Ready?
Ooh, Jacob got one of the Engel bait coolers. Very nice. You have one of those, don't you, Zach?
I do. Mine doesn't have the aerator, so I just have the cooler with the rod holders, and it's great. I actually have, it's awesome. But my buddy has one, and we put Spot in there, and it kept them nice and lively. Nice.
Well, congratulations, Jacob.
All right, up next,
Shane wins the Marucci's. Now, if that style isn't to your taste, Shane, no worries. You actually get a gift card for the Marucci's, and you can pick out whatever style sunglasses you like. And Ryan got Marucci's as well. Congrats, Ryan. Very nice. Oh, man. I want to win this one. I love these tools. Dave, congratulations. You got the CCA tool set with the pliers and the fillet knife. That's an excellent one. I love that one. I got to catch more evasives and get my name in here more.
I just entered my 28-inch snakehead, so
nice.
hoping I win the drawing. I don't know if we announce me in the drawing in October. Is that going to be like? I don't think I can win. I think I have to.
Maybe a little hinky.
Can someone else host this show?
Dan gets a toolkit too. Congrats, Dan. Now we got the fish grips instead of the pliers. That's another highly useful tool.
Absolutely.
Especially for the snakeheads, because those things, man, boy, they are escape artists. They will wiggle right out of your hands. Dan, if you get a snakehead and you put those guys on the jaws, don't forget to put that strap around your wrist.
All right. Well, congrats to all you guys for winning, and just hop on over to ccmd.org/invasives-count-winners. It's going to give you an option to pick up at All Tackle Annapolis or have the items shipped out to you. So congratulations. You got it.
Excellent. Nice round of winners.
All right. You ready to dive into this evening's presentation?
Let's get to fishing, people. Let's get to fishing. And I'm going to start off by saying this is something I do a lot throughout the summertime, into the fall. Man, it's just, when you get done a day of work, few things are better than spending the evening on the water out there fishing. And, usually the weather's calming down as compared to midday. The bite picks up in the evening. So just a lovely way to fish. Now, most of the slides you'll see tonight are from the South River. That's purely because I live right by the South River. But what we're going to talk about is applicable to all the tribs from way up north to way down south, whether you're talking about, gosh, I don't know, certainly the Magathy or the Patapsco, the Elizabeth, wherever you are, this will all hold true. All right, let's go ahead and put up slide number 1, which is going to present my favorite lure for the evening trib fishing, and that is a simple 4-inch white paddle tail. Now, when you're fishing in the tribs, a lot of times you're going to be in shallower water. You're not going to have a lot of moving current. You might want to downsize the head. Out on the bay, I might be using a 3/4 ounce or an ounce. In the tribs, usually I'm using a 1/2 ounce, maybe even a 1/4 ounce if I'm casting in a really shallow water. This black drum was just a few weeks ago in the South River. And that paddle tail, it really, truly, people, it is my go-to. It's what I really like. Why am I not talking about a brand? Because guess what? There are lots of really good brands of these paddle tails. There really are. There's tons of them. But that is just a real killer in the tribs. I should say, before we go to the next slide, Zach, I just want to mention, people, don't forget, pop any questions you may have into the comments. That's why we do this. We want to know what you want to know. Just pop your questions in there. Zach will relay them, get them on screen, and we'll get them answered. All right, let's go to slide number 2. And this is probably my second favorite lure for fishing in the tribs on these short little evening trips. And by the way, morning trips too. I'm not an early riser, so I don't do many, but shucks, my neighbor does this all the time in the morning, Brian. He goes out all the time and does these sunrise to 8:30 a.m. trips. Great way to fish. Here you can see the spinner blade there. That is a perch pounder. Redfish love perch pounders. Rockfish love perch pounders. Heck, you know what else loves perch pounders? Perch love perch pounders. They are a great lure to be throwing in the tributaries. Just a wonderful, wonderful lure.
Hey, they're called perch hounders now.
I have seen that too. Yeah. And there are plenty others. They're, the old classic. Look, I got one sitting on my desk. Just stuck myself a little bit, but the old beetle spin, right?
I love the rooster tails.
The super rooster. I love a super rooster. The yellow with the orange polka dots, I find, is very effective. All good lures. These little spinner baits. Really, really good tributary lures. And if you had been on my boat at gosh, I don't know how many times I've done this in the last few weeks, lots. If you got on my boat at any given time, you would have seen rods with paddle tails and rods with the perch pounders or super roosters. And I'll throw one, take 3 casts, switch up, throw the other. All right, let's go ahead to the next one.
I know it's a little off topic, but it's a good question. So here it comes. Other than tarpon, what surprise catch species or size have you heard about this summer? Flounder or other?
So actually, flounder have been really very thick in the middle bay zone, certainly in the lower bay. Shoot, when we were down in Virginia, Zach, how many flounder did we? We got a lot of flounder. We got some real nice ones still in our report set.
3 keepers and probably twice as many throwbacks.
Yeah, he picked Dylan, and we weren't fishing for them. They were like accident
We're
fishing.
jigging.
Yeah, but Dylan picked up, was it a 23?
22, 23, nice doormat.
Yeah, very, very nice fish. Now, I've picked up 3 keepers north of the Patuxent so far this year, and probably literally 50 throwbacks, but probably more than that, probably 60 or 70. We got maybe a dozen today. Now, none that we got today were keepers. Had one that was kind of pushing close, but he wasn't going to make it. But I'm going to say that the surprise catch for me this year, it's not a huge surprise, but the redfish. And, last few years we've had redfish, right? We've had some around, but numerically I've never seen them like this. And I had one day 2 weeks ago where we caught 18 slot fish plus 6 throwbacks. I never recall a day in the middle Chesapeake Bay where I've caught more than a handful of slot fish. That was just out of sight. It was one of the best slot red bites I've seen anywhere. Texas, Florida, North Carolina, you name it. I mean, that's a lot of redfish. So I'm going with the redfish just based on sheer numbers. I
caught a keeper croaker right off Annapolis, which was a surprise to me because it's been 20 years since that's happened. So.
Well, and another surprise that we saw in Virginia was the weakfish. There were tons of weakfish, and we had a few keepers. Do you remember how many keepers there were?
2 one day. I don't remember. I wasn't on the fillet table the other day, so I don't remember.
We did. We got keepers, and that was sorting through a ton of throwbacks. So it's just really nice to see. Excellent to see.
All right. Kevin's got a trib report that says the Patapsco stinks, but it's good chasing the peanut bunker in the creeks.
Interesting.
There was actually a big fish kill on the bunker up in the Patapsco this week.
Ooh, I didn't hear about that yet.
It was on social media.
Ooh, bummer.
Total bummer. It's a good thing people are swimming in there.
All right, on that note, please put up the next slide, Zach. Let's move on. Bait, peeler crab, fish chunks, whatever. There are catfish in all the tribs. The question is, the farther south you go, how much farther upriver will you have to go? Above the Bay Bridge, you can be pretty much anywhere in any of the tribs, and you can find the catfish. Unless, there's real high salinity, but that won't be an issue, this year or certainly in the springtime. In the south, you're probably going up a little bit farther down the Patuxent. You're going to be going way up, right? You gotta get past the higher salinity. But just using bait is a great way to go. And we're going to talk more about bait in this next slide. This is an important one, people. If you want to catch fish, look in that little red fish's mouth. That was about 2 weeks ago, also in the south. You can see the shad dart. Now, that shad dart was tipped with a live grass shrimp. And I got to tell you, I am absolutely, positively convinced, beyond the shadow of a doubt, when you want to catch numbers of fish, just fish in general, redfish, rockfish, white perch, spot, croaker, whatever. You want numbers? Shad dart tipped with a grass shrimp is the #1 producer. It outcatches all the other stuff we've talked about. It will. It'll outcatch it by a mile. Now, it takes some finesse. You want to be throwing a tiny little shad dart on like 4 or 6 pound test on ultralight gear. You want to cast it out and then slowly bounce it along bottom, which can be really tough to feel with these tiny little shad darts. But man, nothing will outproduce this. Now, how come I said the white paddle tail was my favorite if this outproduces it? Very simple. Just about every cast you got to rebait. Either you're going to get a bite, shucks, half the time you cast the shrimp off. The shrimp fall off really, really easy. And boy, it's a pain. It's a pain. You got to constantly rebait. But if you're willing to do that, I'm telling you, that is just the #1 producer. I see Richard's comment. 3 reds at TPL on fish bites. That's awesome. Richard, I got a question for you. Please let me know which flavor. I want to know which flavor they ate. And while he's typing, let's go on to the next slide, Zach. Oh, and Anglers has the perch pounders and others sell perch pounders. Okay. And a perch pounder, does that say 2? I think it's a perch pounder 2. Bloodworm. Okay, thank you for that, Richard. Interesting. All right, so We're going to shift out of the offerings here for a moment and go to the where to. Piers. Piers are critical in tributaries. They are going to be your main form of structure, probably the most numerous form of structure. Usually they reach out into deeper water. Little tip, look for lifts, look for boats on lifts. When you see a line of piers with no boats and no lifts, there's a very good chance that water is very shallow, okay? But when you see lots of boats on lifts, you know you're probably going to have relatively deep water. But piers are really critical structure. Now, our contributor, Peter Tursick, recently did an article just about pier fishing. Zach, can we pop that link to that article maybe? Excuse me. There it is, Rock Around the Docks. If you're not familiar with fishing docks and piers, I really suggest you just check it out. It's a easy read. It's a quick read. It's on the website. And he has some great tips just for general dock fishing. One thing I want to point out, when you're fishing these docks, I found this critical this year. If the sun is up, okay, the fish want to be in shade. They will be literally underneath of that pier in the shady section. So you got to position yourself so you can sling your lures up underneath of the pier and retrieve through the shade. Very important when the sun is up. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. And this is going to be the second most important thing to look for, your second structure base in the tributaries. And that is riprap. You can see that's riprap in the background. Again, this is in the south. This was a keeper redfish. I think he was 19, if I'm not mistaken. And he was right up on those rocks. Riprap is a really, really good structural item to look for in the tributaries. You know, all riprap is not created equal. All docks are not created equal. How are you going to find this stuff? Well, we do have a lot of articles in Fish Talk that talk about a lot of hot spots in the different tributaries. Just go to the website and plug the tributary you're interested in into the search box. You may well find we've covered, you know, a bunch of spots. Beyond that, and really the best way is going to be prospecting. And when you prospect a river, this is not something you can really do on just a quick little evening trip or a quick little morning trip. You need a day. You need time. You got to really work all through a shoreline, not just the spots that look good, but the spots that look like they may hold some level of potential. And you'll be surprised sometimes. You'll find spots that really don't look that great that are banging. And you'll find spots that look great that are nothing. But here's the important thing. As you do this, you got to keep in the back of your mind that fishing through the course of a day, you're not giving each spot a fair shake, right? The first hour, hour and a half of daylight, or the last hour, hour and a half of daylight, that's going to be the best bite, right? That's when the fish are going to be most active. Moving current is going to be something that gets the fish active. High water when you're in the shallows is important. You might have a really cloudy, rainy, drizzly day with low light where the fish bite consistently. You might have really bright sunshine where the fish really don't want to eat. So you got to take all these factors into consideration. And when I go prospecting, if I go, let's just say, for example, I go out first thing in the morning and I go to a spot and I catch 6 fish. Well, I might give that spot, in the back of my head, I'll give that spot 6 points, 1 point for each fish in its ranking of tributary spots. Okay. Then let's say 10 o'clock rolls around. Morning bite's really over. And let's say I have a moderate current, so there's a little bit of hope there. And I go to a different spot and I catch 2 fish. Well, that spot is facing much more difficult conditions. So I'm going to give each of those fish 2 points. So that spot earned 4 points, even though I only caught 2 fish. But I caught 2 fish in much tougher conditions than I caught the 6 fish earlier. And then let's say, noon rolls around, the sun's high in the sky, the tide is totally dead. It's really the worst possible time to go fishing. And I find this pier and, man, I catch a nice fish off of it. I'm going to give that fish 3 points because that spot really had sort of the toughest job of all of them of producing a fish, and it still produced a fish. The next time I go fishing, I might try that spot first and see if I catch 10 fish, maybe that spot's a really flipping good spot, and I just visited it at the worst possible time, but I still caught a fish. So I've got a really good indication that that's a healthy spot, that spot's going to produce. If you go back to that first spot of the day where you caught 6 that first morning, go there at noon, you might not catch anything, right? So, and of course, all this changes. Spots are constantly changing, and we'll talk more about that later. But just keep that in the back of your head as you're prospecting the docks, the Ripwrap, all these different areas where you think you might find fish. You got to kind of grade them according to the conditions before you make any, hard and fast determination as to, oh, that's a good spot or, oh, that's a bad spot. All right, why don't you go ahead and take me to the next slide, please, Zach, and we're going to see the best of spots.
I was going to throw up a few comments before.
Oh, go for it.
Kevin says water clarity determines whether or not he's going to throw white or chartreuse. I think when we're on the boat, we're always making sure everyone's throwing a variety so we know it's hitting.
Yep, that's a good point. Color, water. My rule is match the lure color to watercolor. So if the water is really clear, I'll be throwing white. If it's really green, I'll go to chartreuse. Eric's saying when the tide is slow for slot drum, I switch to gulp. Yeah, you know what? That stuff really does give you an edge with a fish that really likes some scent and some taste. No question about it. And Eric's also saying you'll need to plan to get the fish out from under the dock and out of the Ripwrap quickly. Boy, that's a truth. I'll put my kayak in reverse once the fish is hooked to prevent breakoffs. That's good advice. And, Eric, you just brought up something I meant to mention earlier when I was talking about docks. You kayak guys have a serious advantage when working the docks because you can get right up there. You can get right up next to it, nice and quiet, and flip your baits right underneath. Kayaks and small boats, too. If you've got a 30-footer, you probably don't want to, get 10 feet away from another dock. One big gust of wind, and you could have a problem, right? What I've found, the Minn Kota on the bow of my boat is magic for doing this. You can hit spot lock. You don't have to worry about drifting around. Give you a tremendous advantage. But this is a small boat game. Kayak guys, they have an edge over me. No question about it. By the way, before we get up that next slide, Zach, we are going to mention that we wish Eric well. Eric has been unable to fish due to medical issues from taking a fall on a boat last week. And Eric, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this might be the longest stretch you have not gone fishing in probably the last 10 years. So we wish you well. We hope you get better soon and can get back out there and fish. Eric Packer, glad to see you. Maryland Bill Dance. I love it. Awesome.
That wasn't a joke about the fall, but it kind of.
Oh, man. Okay. Now I put 2 and 2 together. Yeah.
No. He didn't mean that. He said that before you said the fall. I'm just making the bad joke because I love Eric so much.
All right. Let's go ahead.
Can't wait to fish with you, Eric.
Pull up the next slide. We actually have Eric coming up in a slide, but not yet. We have one other first. So this is what I would consider prime. You've got both Ripwrap and docks. You got them both. Now, this fish obviously came off the end of the dock. But get in there, get in tight, get in between the piers, cast up to that Ripwrap where the pier meets the shore, cast along, the first 4 or 5 pilings, get in close, work both the Ripwrap and the pier. And that really is primo tributary territory. All right, now bring us up, Eric.
Sorry, say it again?
Now bring us up, Eric. Go ahead to the next slide.
Next.
There's Eric. Hey, Eric. So this picture doesn't show it because I took it in the wrong direction, but this was a really tough day of fishing. We weren't catching squat this day, and we were pulling teeth to get bites. And Eric pulled this very nice white perch out from underneath of a duck blind. And that particular duck blind has produced keeper rockfish, lots of these big perch. It's a really good spot. And duck blinds are something that most people just run right past. They never pay any attention to. Guess what? Duck blind, pier, doesn't make a difference. It really doesn't make a difference. And when you see a duck blind out in the water, an offshore duck blind, you know that the water's deep enough for a duck hunter to drive his boat out there and get there in the middle of the winter. So it's a really good sign. Duck blinds are something you do not want to overlook. If you've been driving past one for the last 10 years, the next time you're driving by, pull back on the throttle, check it out. It really is worth your while. I'm not saying they're all great. They don't always produce fish, of course, but they're a producer. They are a producer. All right, let's go to the next slide. Open water. Now, you can tell from the hat that this is late in the season. This is generally going to be, 5-10 years ago, I would have said it was an October thing. These days, it's more of a November thing. But when the peanut bunker all migrate out of the creeks and ball up in the mouth of the river, the rockfish, generally speaking, will come in to feast. It doesn't happen every year. It doesn't happen every tributary. Some years it happens in multiple tributaries. Some years one's hot and another's not. Very difficult to predict. Basically impossible to predict. But when we get late into the season, just remember there can be an open water bite. Generally speaking, it's going to be marked by birds. Not necessarily a ton of birds, because these won't necessarily be huge schools of fish. Sometimes they are, but not necessarily. But as we get into October, I'd say I start really looking for this these days in like mid-October. If I see, let's say 5 or more birds in the same very close vicinity, and they look active, I'll go over there and I'll peek. I'll start looking at that. That open water bite will start up. Often this is also an evening thing, even more so than a morning thing, interestingly. Not always, but often. Eric's mentioning groupings of old pilings. Absolutely. If it's sticking out of the water, it's structure, right? You just never know what's going to hold those fish. So definitely. I've also found actually channel markers, not the single poles, but the one with multiple poles. They sometimes will hold fish. I'd say they're a little more of a long shot than like a duck blind or a pier. But there's one particular one in the south, that last red on the way out. I stop and check that thing, I don't know, multiple times a season. Usually it's blank. Every now and again it saves the day, All right, let's go ahead to the next slide, please. So these spots change. They change. And we're going to have a series of 3 slides here, okay? These are all the south. And again, I just did this because it's my backyard. I know it like the back of my hand, but it goes for all the tributaries. All these red X's are spots that are normally good spots, right? Year after year, you generally can catch fish in these spots. You can see I marked, Thomas Point, right? Generally holding fish. That's the rocks off the point, not the point itself. This year, none of these have really been holding many fish. They've had their days, but generally speaking, they've been really blah. Herb mentioned jetties. Absolutely. Jetties are better than straight riprap because they stick out. Love jetties. The X in the center upper below Harness Creek there, that's Hill Point. Historically, that's like my favorite spot in the South River. Man, 15 years in a row, that was the best spot in the river that I had. Last 3 years, it's been dead. This year, I think I've caught 1 good fish off of it. There are a few fish in there, here and there, time to time, but it's nothing like it used to be. I had days where I'd fish the tributaries, the South River, and catch my limit right there at Hill Point. Stuff like that just doesn't happen anymore. I don't know why. I'll bet in 3, 4, 5 years it happens again. But these spots change. Go ahead to the next slide if you would, please, Zach. So these blue ones are the same type of historic spots, but they have been producing this year. So all those normal spots, they haven't been producing. These 2 have. They've been producing. Now go ahead to the next slide, please, Zach. These 4 spots are not historic spots for me. They've been producing this year. Now you'll notice that the second one from the bottom there is in sort of the same spot as the blue. That's because there's a string of piers there, and there have been fish there, but they've been on different piers. They're usually always on a couple particular piers. They've been on completely different piers. I don't know why. This is like one of those things, How do you figure out what the fish are thinking? I have no idea. But what I want to convey to everybody is this changes. Where these hot spots, when you find the good pier, you find the good riprap, it will change. It will change. And when you have a spot that you don't think much of, that you never caught squat at, next year, check it out. Because you know what? It'll change. It'll get different. And I'd say probably every other year, I'll make it a point to take a full day of fishing and just work the South. Just work the whole dang river. And almost without fail, some of the really good spots that I have just don't produce. And some of the spots that I thought were really crappy produce fish. It's like a go figure kind of thing. But it changes. It just changes an awful lot. So don't marry yourself to any of these spots. Be sure to keep moving around, keep changing, and be sure to keep exploring. It's really, really important to keep exploring, especially when the fishing in the tributary in your backyard gets really tough. Do that exploring, because you know what? It might just be that the spots that you've kind of fallen into a rut with, that you always hit over and over again, they might not be producing, but you know what? Some other spots might be. So critical factor. All right, Zach, go ahead and take us to the next slide, please. And so here we just have a beautiful shot of an evening on a tributary, which I threw in here just because I wanted to express again, your best fishing is going to be those after work hours or those before work hours. So not only are you getting in a day on the water or some time on the water when you have a regular work day, on top of that, it's the very best time. And there were countless times this summer, especially July when it was super duper hot, countless times when I would go out at 5 o'clock, wouldn't get a bite until 6 o'clock. 6 to 7, I might get a bite or two. 7:30 to sunset, we catch the heck out of fish. And Zach, you're going to remember this. You were there for one of those days. You remember that day? You remember?
Remind me.
I can't believe you don't remember. When we sat there and cast at the same spot over and over to the point that we basically gave up fishing. We're like, we're not going to catch anything tonight. And then all of a sudden, a fish. And then another, and then another, and then another, and another. You don't remember this?
Maybe.
Oh my God. You were there for it, Zach.
I believe you.
I believe it was July. I'm pretty sure. We had fished from like 5 until 7:30, and we were like, well, I guess we're just not going to bite tonight. And then that last 45 minutes of light, they fired up. I can't believe you don't remember that. Huh.
We did a lot of fishing this year.
Huh. Well, I think this may be a first, people. We actually ran through all the slides, not only on time, but early. So if you got any questions on tributary topics or others, feel free to go ahead and pop them into the comments. We actually managed to get through all the slides. I'm shocked. Zach, has this ever happened before?
Not with 20 minutes to spare. With some of those you glazed through, the charts you kind of zipped right through there.
I did kind of zip through the charts. But really, all three of those slides were just to prove a specific point, and that's that these places change. You can't get married to a hot spot, because the next thing you know, that spot's just done. And another spot comes up. So Kevin's saying the best advice he ever got fishing was from, excellent. Distilled is spend a year in your trib on a John boat. You know what? Yeah, man. Yeah. So that dates back. Gosh, Kevin, I can't remember the specific conversation with you, but I know exactly what you're talking about, because that dates back to when I was out a boat. All I had was the tiny little boat. Gosh, it was a long time ago. I don't even remember. I think it was when I had the Twin V, and the Twin V was broken. And all I had was my tiny little boat. And so I was stuck. And what I discovered was a lot more fishing in the tributary than I really ever thought. It was really eye-opening. I mean, it was magnificent. And that'll happen. And I don't care if you're on the Magathy, the Chop Tank, the Patuxent, the James, the Rap. It doesn't matter. All these tributaries hold a lot more fish than everybody thinks. I can't tell you how many times I've gone running all over God's creation, all over the Chesapeake Bay, trying to catch fish. Maybe caught some, maybe not. Come in, and at the end of the day, tried a few tributary spots and been like, boom, that out caught running around the Chesapeake. I mean, it happens. Absolutely happens. So
we got a bunch of questions rolling in.
All right, Larry's saying, what about after dusk? I see tons of little fish jumping and moving. So, Larry, absolutely. So, shortly before complete darkness for about an hour is generally pretty quiet. You'll see a lot of little fish moving around. You won't catch a whole lot of predators. About an hour after the sun goes down, maybe 45 minutes, then they start to kick into gear. And I don't know this for a fact, but I've been told it's because it's time for their eyes to adjust and all that. But that very first period of darkness is usually not real hot. After that, it gets hot. Now, the best way to fish that is to find artificial light source. And you can look for dock lights. Dock lights are wonderful artificial light source, cast right into the light. You can look for bridges. Bridges usually have a light line, which holds a ton of fish. And if you have a submersible, you can go out and park your boat on one of those light lines, drop in the submersible so you have this intersection of light with your boat and with the bridge's light line. And man, that can produce a lot of fish. Some people may remember this. Years and years and years ago, we really didn't catch rockfish in July and August during the day. It just didn't happen much. But if you went out at night and set up the lights and cast net some bunker, because they'll all fly into those lights, they'll start swarming it. And then live line the bunker along the light line, man, you tear them up. Herb is surprised I'd mentioned topwater. Okay, well, you know what, Herb? That's a very good point. You're right. I apologize. I admitted that. I like to put out the topwater literally in the first 15 minutes and the last 15 minutes. And that's kind of it. And you'll catch, anytime there's low light, you can catch on topwater. Once the sun's up good, I'm definitely switching over to jigs because I just think they're more productive. But that final period of light and that initial period of light, topwater is a great bet. Now, I do want to say I'm generally not throwing topwater at piers. Ripwrap, jetties, yes, but piers, no. And if you have a different experience with that, please let me know. I'm not saying it won't catch fish. I'm just saying it's not something I normally do. One thing that I find topwater really, really good for in those low light periods is sticks, shallow water trees, tree limbs hanging in the water, stuff like that, wood that normally, might be in a foot, 2 feet of water, normally wouldn't hold fish the rest of the day. That topwater bite can come alive. Jetties are really good too. I remember my boys used to always get down to Mayo Beach when they were in high school, and middle school and high school. They'd walk down there at sunset and they'd start throwing the topwater off the jetty, and they would catch good. Robert's asking, is there anything you would suggest lure-wise after sunset? That's a toughie. Lure fishing is tough after sunset. You can do it. Bait is like kind of a safer bet, but if you want to throw lures, the one thing I would say is go dark. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but black and purple, are like deep, deep purple, are really good nighttime lures. Again, this is something I can't attest to personally, but I have been told that is because, I think I read actually, that is because looking up, the little bit of ambient light from the moonlight and starlight is blocked completely by that super dark profile, and the fish can see that. It's just what, I can't swear that's true. But I can swear that purple and black are really good nighttime colors. So if you want to throw a lure, I would go with that. I also like lures, by the way, after dark with rattles. Rattles are really good, like rattle traps. Good bet. Got to use a darkie, but that's a good bet. Mike's asking if I use bait like squid strips. Oh, on the tails. No. Those tails go naked. Putting anything on that hook along with them just interferes with the action of the lure. You really don't want anything on a paddle tail. Most soft plastics, that's really going to be true of. Just let them be. Now, if you're in a situation where you feel like some scent is necessary, again, it's good for the redfish. It does help you with the reds, certainly with blacks. As Eric mentioned earlier, gulp. I would go to gulp. Or Fish Bites also has some scent-enhanced lures. The ones that I've found best are the shrimp, actually under a popping cork. I had a trip earlier this year where I was using a 3-inch white Fish Bites shrimp about 2-3 feet under a popping cork. and speckled trout were just blasting it. It was the ticket. But with the paddle tail itself, no, you really don't want to add anything like that on there because that'll just interfere with the action, just messes with it. Then he's asking, would you consider the lower Pocomoke River a good tributary? Heck yeah! Man, I love the Pocomoke. Although, honestly, I love it even more up the river for the winter fishing. That winter fishing can't be beat. Perch, crappie, bass, pickerel. Man, it's off the hook. But yes, absolutely. That is great territory. The lower Pocomoke, that whole from the Tangier Sound clear down to Fisherman's Island, that whole east stretch of the eastern shore, all those creeks, all those tributaries, that is all lovely stuff. You're likely much of the time to get more of the Specs Reds and perhaps fewer of the rock. Sometimes not. It's a little bit, it's different territory. It's different kind of water. But it is excellent. It is really excellent. I'm going to give a shout out to the Big Anamessex. I love that one. Michael's asking, how would define where the mouth of the Severn River begins? Interesting question, Michael. I think you could just draw a line. I'm not sure if Whitehall Bay counts. I'm honestly not sure how you would define that. That's an interesting question.
Speaking of all the Severn, I actually got a report of a pretty good after dark topwater bite near Hackett's.
Interesting. Near Hackett's?
Yeah.
Huh. Wow, that's real interesting.
Yeah. Hope he's not listening.
I would say when you look to your left and you see land, and you look to your right and you see land, and you look behind you and you see the bay, you're in the mouth of the river. That's the best I could do. Sorry, Michael.
I would say it's Tolly to Greenbury. That's kind of draw a line from those two. That's that. Yeah.
Okay, you know what? We're playing this all wrong. The thing to do would be to go to the DNR's striped bass spring season map and look at where they draw the line where you cannot, where it's no longer considered main stem bay. Because they will have that line drawn, I guarantee you. And, I would call that pretty official if the DNR uses that line. Woo! Do we have any other questions in the queue, Zach?
We do.
Slam them on up there.
We're going to look at the map first. Here
Oh, you found it. Boy, you did that fast. I'm impressed. All right. Let's see. Can you zoom in?
No, maybe. Hold on.
Oh, look at this. Look at this. There. Man, I still. So it looks like Whitehall is marked out separately. So it goes inside of Whitehall, right? That's kind of what it's looking like to me.
Yeah. It's like a little,
yeah, so it's not directly across.
Yeah, it's like a little V.
Huh.
Anywho, while looking at the Rod and Reef Slam, I was looking at the chart. There's actually a little reef right here. Right? And
really?
Inside of Tolly. I'm going to have to check that out.
That's not even what I'm aware of.
I always fished this area, the point of Tolly. That's where I caught that croaker. It's a white perch. But inside here, anyway, go check that out. I'm going to poke over there. I think I'm going to sign up. I think I'm going to go fish sabiki fish.
It's a lot of fun. It's a ton of fun pulling up all those, the diversity. The diversity is the cool thing.
All right, we got Fred. Hey, Fred. And
hey, Fred, how are you?
Fred's got some awesome paintings we're going to have for our Fish for a Cure auction. Just stay tuned. I might have to bid on one of these because they're really cool.
So Fred says he's caught bigger fish in the bay like at TPL than in the South River. I would say normally that's true. And you're certainly, not likely to catch, you can't catch the 40 inchers in the river because you're not allowed to fish for them. But I will say this. I have caught rockfish over 30 inches inside the South, and you'd be shocked at how far up. Oh, man, what is the name of that creek? One north of Glebe. What is that, Alms House?
Alms House is the Woodland Beach one.
Yeah. I think it's Alms House, one north of Glebe, at the mouth of that creek. More than once, actually. Now, not in a long time. That was years ago. but I've seen them over 30 inches in there. So I don't know. I call that a pretty good rockfish. but I agree. On the whole, generally speaking, if you want to get the bigger fish, it's more apt to happen outside. Although, I'm also going to say I have caught more keeper rockfish in the river this year than I have outside of the river, and that's for sure. May have something to do with the amount of time I spend in the river, because I do a lot of these evening trips, but still, they're decent fish. Decent fish in the tribs. It's kind of shocking sometimes. Hey, Wayne. So that's Wayne. There's a lot more ruins and failed rock groins and shoreline protection and prospect than folks realize, even on the west side. Absolutely true. No question about it. And poking and prodding through Wayne's articles is a great way to find a lot of that stuff. And you know what, Wayne? There was a lot in the Potomac that I had never known was there until reading some of your articles and looking at some, being like, wow, man, there's stuff there. I had no idea. But there are, and a lot of it is where, somebody rip-wrapped the shoreline, who knows, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, and it's still eroded away. Well, all those rocks are still there, except now they're in, 3 feet of water. Prime structure. Carter says he's been reading reports of cobia far north, lost a big one at the mouth of the chop tank a month ago, but I thought that was just by chance. Well, Carter, anytime you catch a cobia up as far as a chop tank, I'd say, it's pretty dang lucky. It doesn't happen every day, that's for sure. I personally saw 4 in total through the course of 3 days off of Poplar Island, just west of it in 50 to, I think the shallow one I saw was in 20. Most were in, 50, 40, 30 on the edge. Couldn't get any bites. Got one to turn and look, but he wouldn't eat. But they were up there. Now, that was a week ago. I don't know how they're going to react to this cool down that we've had, because we've had a significant drop in the temperature these last few days here. We've had some cool light. And so there's, they may have turned tail and cruised. I'm not saying that's necessarily the case. They could still be around. There have been years when, cobia season is closed and there's still been some cobia around up here. So really hard to say, but I have not seen them since it turned cold. I went through that zone today. It was too windy to try and look for them, so I didn't even bother trying. It was just too many waves. Wasn't going to happen. But it's possible. It's possible. They could still be up there. Larry saying shallow water here has tons of SAV. What would you cast here? That's great. So you can work the edges with everything we've talked about, or put on a popping cork. And Eric, if you want to chime in on this, feel free, because I know you do this quite a bit. And a popping cork is a really good way to work a lure above that SAV. And reds, specks, sometimes rock, you'll find them all using that grass. But generally speaking, if you try and drag a paddle tail through it, you'll get snagged up. So Eric's saying spring grass for trout, docks for striped bass, perch off docks and grass too. But as summer moves in, grass dies off, and trout move out, and drum move in. Okay. Yeah, the grass, the spring grass, there are a couple different kinds of grass, and I forget what the spring one is called, but we do get those masses of SAV in the springtime that die back rapidly. And that's kind of a short-lived thing. The ones that stick around, though, they will still hold fish. I wish I was better educated on the types of grass, but the one that sticks around, if you can find that, that's a good thing.
I like the sort of like the Texas-side jig heads. They're sort of a weedless jig head.
Is that the one that has the little? It's almost like a swivel between the head and the hook.
Yeah, and I was using those down off the St. Mary's River, and they're working quite well.
And then when you guys were down there, you were fishing weed beds, right?
Yep, that's correct. So something like that.
Ah, there we go. So you can. So
I think anglers. No, anglers and all tackle both carry those. So that's where I go.
So you're threading on a fluke weedless style with that hook, right?
Yeah, and they go up to like ½ ounce. So yeah.
So the hook point is like laying right against the top of the fluke.
Right. And what's nice about the Z-Man paddles is it has actually like a dorsal fin that the hook sits inside and actually, so it's like keeps it recessed. So it's a nice design.
Doesn't interfere with the hook set at all?
I've got pictures to prove otherwise.
I'm asking, not saying. I don't know. I've not. I don't think I've used those.
The reds hit pretty hard. So do stripers, so they just smash it right down. I mean, I use those for snakeheads as well.
Okay, interesting.
Robert says, thanks for sharing all the tips and info.
It's our pleasure, Robert. Thank you for tuning in.
I think we're all caught up with questions. Anyone else want to chime in? Well, while we're waiting for that, let's go ahead and mention again the Grayson Basis discount. This runs all the way through March for this year's competition. Monthly prizes. You're contributing citizen science to let our fisheries managers know about where these fish are being caught, how big they're getting, especially the blue catfish. That's really what the state has their sights on now. I think I was fishing on the eastern shore the other day and caught a 28-inch snakehead. A few minutes later, my buddy caught his first pickerel. Summertime pickerel is always a surprise. My other buddy caught a largemouth bass, and his wife caught 24 crabs. And this is all in the same proximity. So, I'm no scientist, but it does appear that the snakeheads are sort of balancing out and cohabitating with other species. Now, that's not the case for everywhere. I think folks in Blackwater, they really thrived for a few years and did sort of wipe out some of the indigenous fish. They said there used to be a ton of crappie and bass over there, and you don't catch those anymore. But throughout the bay, each little pocket of our tributary is like a different ecosystem. So it's not a blanket statement, but I think we are seeing sort of a balance with the snakeheads after 22 years.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in.
One more question. What's your outlook for the fall, Manny?
Oh man. Wow, so many outlooks to talk about.
Spanish Max have shown up late in the Middle Bay.
I do think, fall, it used to be Rocktober. Now I think it's Rockvember. I think it'll probably happen late. The big bite for the rockfish will probably happen late. Hopefully the redfish will stick around. We'll see. Farther down south, I would expect there will be a really good fall speck bite. Now I don't know how far north that will go, but I'm talking, mostly Tangier and Virginia waters here. They had a good spring. There were some nice big fish in the spring. I would expect the fall speck run to be a highlight, particularly in the Virginia section of the bay. I think that should be a really good one. Hopefully we'll get something else going on. I got to say the mackerel have been a disappointment this year north of, say, the Patuxent. There've been some good mackerel bites farther south, but we didn't get much up north. Same for bluefish. Bluefish have been a little bit of a disappointment. The redfish has been great. Maybe the reds will stick around. I will say, last winter I heard of some redfish accidentally being caught, way up in the Middle Bay. So you never know; those fish might be sticking around these days. We'll have to see.
Thanks for everyone for tuning in. We have a ton of events we didn't touch on. We did talk about a few things earlier. Rod and Reef Slam coming up. We have a CCA banquet. But make sure you just go to our website and check out the calendar. Tons of cool stuff as we're losing daylight and you can't fish in the evenings. There's all kinds of cool stuff.
Wait. What'd you just say?
This 7:30.
You can always fish in the evenings.
Can we start a petition to change daylight savings times?
Yes.
For working fishermen so we can actually get, just make it like 2 hours. Like,
yes,
2 more
100%.
I don't need light until noon, give me light till 9 all year.
I'm totally with you.
So we got Tom Weaver coming to West End Grill in Annapolis on the Wednesday the 25th. He'll be talking about some fall fishing. Tom's a great captain. But big event coming up is the Annapolis Powerboat Show.
Now, yes. How could we forget the Annapolis Powerboat Show?
Exactly. so next Live with Lenny is on October 3rd, I think. We'll have a behind the scenes discussion whether or not we're gonna shuffle that around, or maybe we'll do October 2nd or something. I don't know. Who knows? But you'll get an email alert. Follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and you'll get notified about all that. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.